Are you sure you won't change your mind?
Yes, that woman has compound eyes, bee's eyes. Now, you may not believe this, and I'm not sure I do, but the scene you just saw is from one of Roger Ebert's favorite movies, Invasion of the Bee Girls. I can hear you asking now, what's going on here? If Siskel and Ebert lost their minds, they're recommending trash. Well, that's not quite right. We're recommending movies that we call our guilty pleasures, movies that we're almost embarrassed to admit that we love, and that's what we'll take a look at this week on Sneak Previews. Across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. The subject this week is guilty pleasures, movies we've stored away in a special compartment of our movie-going memories. Most of the time, when you walk out of a movie, you've formed an opinion that, well, maybe the movie is great, or it's good, it's not so hot, maybe it's even a dog of the week. But occasionally, every once in a while, you come across a movie that defies those categories. It may not be good, but it's certainly not that bad either. You get a silly grin on your face, and you sound half defensive, and you admit that, I don't know, I kind of liked it. This week, we're going to look at 6 movies like that. In addition to Invasion of the Bee Girls, our guilty pleasures are also going to include the kung fu movie Kill and Kill Again, a teenage allegory called Massacre at Central High, the sexually bizarre mystery film Private Parts, and the eccentric children's musical Bugsy Malone. Now, Gene starts with High Risk.
Well, my first guilty pleasure is a recent film, and I put it on my list because I'd like to see it get more attention around the country. It's called High Risk, an action comedy that Roger and I reviewed a couple of months ago here. This film came as a total surprise, I think, to both of us. We saw it in a movie theater that typically shows trash films. I felt a little bit guilty about being there. As for the film, it's sort of a comic version of Deliverance. In High Risk, a bunch of out-of-work American men take off on an adventure to get rich quick by stealing some dope money from a South American drug dealer. Like the men in Deliverance, these amateurs get into more trouble than they thought they would. But at the beginning of the film, as James Brolin and Cleavon Little and a little dog parachute into South America, everything is going along perfectly. Well, almost perfectly.
Dog peed on me.
2 men and a dog. No wonder we like it, right? This film is full of surprises, some good action scenes, and high comedy, too, with a marvelous portrayal by Anthony Quinn as a crazy jungle bandit. High Risk is one of those films that, at least for a critic, when it's over, you immediately want to know the name of the writer and the director, because you know there are going to be people with a bright future in the movie business, and the writer and director of High Risk is the same person, Stuart Raffle, and I can't wait to see his next film.
You know, I walked into the theater to see High Risk with a feeling of dread inside. I felt this is going to be a forced march through the same plot I've seen in about 100 other films, and it wasn't. And one of the things I really liked was the fact that this film stopped to have time to develop a sense of style, to develop a sense of humor. It wasn't simply just a recitation of the things in the plot.
I think one of the things that runs through all of these guilty pleasures is that they're familiar categories of film, but they're surprisingly good. Somebody put some extra effort to write in an extra character or a subtext to the story, and that's what makes them excel, I think.
That's certainly the case with my film, my next film, my first guilty pleasure, which is a kung fu movie, by the way. That's a genre where we don't expect too much.
Right.
One of the hazards of habitual moviegoing is the inescapable fact that dozens of kung fu movies are released every year, and they're almost always completely interchangeable. They're totally lacking in artistry. They don't even have simple craftsmanship, and usually they're terminally boring. Well, not long ago, I went to see a new kung fu movie expecting a typically gruesome experience, and I found myself being delighted by this film. The Unexpected Pleasure is called Kill and Kill Again, and it stars James Ryan as a kung fu practitioner who looks and acts like sort of a cross between Clint Eastwood and Charles Bronson. In this scene, Ryan has gone to consult a legendary, wise, and gifted kung fu master, and watch the sly way this scene unfolds its series of surprises.
Your outer eye sees clearly.
You must be tired of playing games.
Your inner eye is equally aware.
This time the game is serious.
I know.
Later in the movie, Ryan tries to defeat a supervillain who wants to rule the world by turning everyone into zombies. While the brainwashed recruits look on, Ryan attempts to defeat one of the enemy's most ferocious fighters. That's great the way he backs up and he runs forward in slow motion. He goes through the air, he does 3 twists, and then he lands, and then he steps forward, and then he hits the guy. It's all for show. The lady with the orange day-glow hair in that scene is the villain's girlfriend. She keeps calling the villain Peaches, which is not exactly how the most feared arch-fiend master criminal in the world likes to be referred to. The plot of Kill and Kill Again also involves a scheme to corner the world's energy supply by making fuel out of potatoes. I guess the villain's master plan is to rule a race of zombie potato farmers. Thank goodness James Ryan turns up in time to kick that master plan to pieces. All during Kill and Kill Again, as I watched James Ryan fighting and kicking and acting, I had the feeling this movie was like an early film of Bronson or Eastwood or Bruce Lee. I think there's a genuine movie star here right at the dawn of his career. He may be in a cheap exploitation film today, but his potential may be enormous. We may hear a lot more from James Ryan. Then again, we may not.
I like the point you're making at the end about catching somebody earlier in their career, because I think that runs through a lot of these films. These are people getting their way into the movie business through working in the most obvious forms, horror films, mysteries, action pictures. And what we're spotting, in the case of the guy I just mentioned, Stuart Raffle, now James Ryan here, are people who transcend the material. And they're doing better than the material that you might expect.
I don't know anything about James Ryan's background or anything, but it does seem like there are 2 ways to get into the movies. One is a very serious Broadway actor makes it into a serious drama. The other is people who just have some kind of a relationship with the camera and have some kind of charisma that's there. Yeah, in terms of movie actors.
Right.
I think Ryan fits into that category. If you go back and look at some of those early pictures by big movie stars, they had something, even though everything around them in the movie was forgettable or second-rate, and in this case, it's better than that. But they have some special quality.
So what you're really saying is so pleasurable about the film is him.
Also, the film itself is not so bad. It's kind of funny. That whole plot with the super race and the girl with the orange hair, it's kind of funny.
Okay. Well, my next guilty pleasure is a gangster film in which the oldest actor isn't even old enough to have a driver's license. It's Bugsy Malone, with a cast made up entirely of young people, and a wonderfully entertaining musical that I can't understand this. It was a box office dud in 1976. It's a thoroughly enjoyable love letter to Hollywood musicals and gangster films by English director Alan Parker, best known for the film he made immediately after Bugsy Malone, Midnight Express, which he followed with the musical Fame. Bugsy Malone tells the story of two feuding mobsters, Dandy Dan and Fat Sam. The film's good guy is played by Scott Baio, who later went on to star in the TV comedy Happy Days. Just as Baio meets a struggling young singer, Dandy Dan's hitmen burst into the speakeasy with furious and creamy gunplay.
What's your name, anyway?
Brown.
Brown? Sounds like a loaf of bread.
Lousy Brown.
Lousy Brown? Sounds like a stale loaf of bread.
Ha ha, very funny. Terrific.
Pleased to meet you. I'm Bugsy Malone.
Don't call us. We'll call you.
Okay, everybody. It's okay. Just a little excitement, that's all. Razzmatazz, music. Want to see everybody enjoying themselves. Don't say Fat Sam joint, the liveliest joint in town. Buckles, this means trouble.
To solve the trouble, Fat Sam has Gunmall Jodie Foster bring in Bugsy Malone. Fat Sam has an offer that Bugsy just can't refuse.
Pull up a chair. Fix him a drink, honey. Thanks, special on the rocks. So what can I do for you, Sam? Bugsy, I'm in a jam. Dandy Dan's breathing down my neck. At any minute now, he'll take over my entire organization. You still got all this? Not if Dandy Dan gets his way. Won't have a dime for a shoe shine. So, could you leave us alone a minute? This man's talk.
Oh, that's all right. I'm unshockable.
Go fix your makeup.
I've already fixed it.
Then go make yourself more beautiful than you already are.
You know that that's impossible.
Anything's possible.
All right, I'll go manicure my gloves.
I'll go manicure my gloves? That's one of my all-time now two favorite lines in the movies. The other is the one the woman says in the Billy Wilder film, Ace in the Hole. I don't go to church. Kneeling bags my nylons. This is a delightful film, especially for children. Why is it a guilty pleasure? Because it really isn't fashionable for critics to enjoy or endorse children's films. But for me, Bugsy Malone is sort of an ageless entertainment. It truly is an affectionate piece of work by an English filmmaker about Hollywood gangster films and musicals. And what happens is that we sit there smiling at what these kids are saying and doing, these adult things, and ultimately, that makes us smile at the very nature of gangster movies and musicals themselves. It reveals the very childlike nature of those films, I think.
You know, you're exactly right. I'm thinking of a 30s gangster movie like Angels with Dirty Faces. The people in that movie are just about as mature as the people in this movie.
It's true.
You know, you said it wasn't fashionable for critics to like movies with or about or for children.
I think so.
I noticed a review the other day where somebody was saying, the critic was saying, well, when I go into this movie, I'm asked to make a compact with the screen that I will revert to childhood. And the critic said, well, I don't want to do that. I don't look at it that way. I don't feel that reverting to childhood is something a critic should or shouldn't do. You enjoy the movie as you enjoy Bugsy Malone on the level that it's intended to be enjoyed at. And it was fun, you know. I didn't have to revert to anything.
I thought it was a very clever combination of the so-called adult world and the childlike world, and as we've just both agreed, I guess, they're quite closely related when it comes to Hollywood musicals and gangster films.
Maybe people resisted it because they didn't want to see a gangster film with kids. They couldn't get that original idea through their heads.
Okay, they're lost.
Right. We move now to a slightly older age group, high school students, in a movie called Massacre at Central High. This is actually a very good movie, a considerable filmmaking achievement that got overlooked back in 1976 for a variety of reasons, probably including a small budget, no big stars, marginal theatrical distribution, and a title that makes the movie seem sleazy and cheap. But Massacre at Central High is a well-crafted allegory that deliberately excludes almost all the adults and teachers in the high school in order to show us the student body as a breeding ground for fascism. At the beginning of the film, a tightly knit and rigidly authoritarian gang absolutely controls every aspect of life in this high school. They make trouble for misfits, nonconformists, and even the teenage library assistant.
Yes, gentlemen. May I be of some assistance?
Yeah, I'm returning a book.
Certainly. I'm afraid it's overdue. That would be 20 cents.
You've got to be kidding.
Please understand, I didn't devise the school's archaic policy toward overdue material, and I gain no personal financial reward from collecting the requisite funds, but, of course, I'm only a minor functionary, a volunteer assistant. If you'd rather discuss it with the librarian, she'll be here tomorrow.
And I'm confident, Arthur, that you'll have the place spick and span by the time she gets here.
Later, the violence escalates. A disturbed kid locks one of the gang members inside a runaway van. Then he confronts the movie's lead, played by Andrew Stevens.
David? David?
Yeah.
I knew it. I thought I knew with Bruce. And the others, I was sure. I knew it was you.
And you didn't do anything?
Damn it, I couldn't. I owed you, man. And then I repaid you with that. I can't fight you.
Shove your pity, man. It's not going to save you.
I know that. But please, man, do it. Do it now. Just get it over with.
Go to hell. I'm not a mercy killer. I'll choose when and how. I only hope you're man enough to struggle.
It's intriguing the way they talk out their motivations there. These are not the usual inarticulate movie teenagers. The most interesting aspect of Massacre at Central High is that it doesn't come up with simple social reasons why some of these students become violent bullies and the rest knuckle under. This is not a screenplay by sociologists. Instead, Massacre at Central High, made in America by a Dutchman named René Dolder, is about the very nature of violence as a tool for intimidation and brainwashing. Violence that not only frightens the targets of brutality, but also acts powerfully to indoctrinate the gang members themselves. It's a little strange, a little unexpected somehow, but a movie named Massacre at Central High is an intelligent and uncompromising allegory about the psychology of violence.
It's kind of exciting to do this show. We're exposing a lot of fresh names to people, just getting started in their careers, their filmmaking careers. René Dolder's another name. And again, the secret is he's given the genre of high school fight films, or whatever you want to call them, beating each other up, and he makes a picture that's worthy of analysis.
You know, one reason I'm happy this is one of my choices on this program is that we have spent the 1980-81 season on sneak previews attacking all of these films about violence and teenagers.
Right.
The key image of the last year has been a dead teenager. Well, this movie is filled with teenagers, but with dead teenagers, but it's a good movie because it has style and it has ideas in it.
And that's the point, I guess, is that it isn't the material, it's the way you treat the material. That certainly applies to my next guilty pleasure. Last year when we did a similar show on our guilty pleasures, I chose the skin flick Emmanuel, pointing out that film critics rarely admit to being sexually aroused by movies. In the same vein, I now offer the case for voyeurism with the movie Private Parts, a well-made thriller from 1973. It's the story of George, a teenage loner who lives in a hotel with his mean old Aunt Martha, who manages the hotel. George is a social outcast. He cannot relate to women, so he uses sexual paraphernalia as a substitute. There's a sense of foreboding throughout Private Parts. Somehow you immediately know you're entering dangerous psychological ground here. George meets a young girl, a runaway, who moves into the hotel. He leaves some sexy, provocative undergarments in her bedroom, and then he calls her from a nearby phone booth. For extra kicks, he tape records their conversation.
George, is that you? Oh, I liked them. I really did. They were really neat. I never saw anything like them before.
You look terrific wearing those things.
Thank you. Was it exciting? George, I don't know exactly what you want. I love the gifts and things. I mean, you're the only one who doesn't treat me like a little girl. You think of me as a woman, don't you?
Yes.
I was wondering, wouldn't you like to really get together? We could talk or something. And you could take my picture.
But George's Aunt Martha, who runs the hotel in George's life, doesn't want him seeing the girl.
That's your fault, George. If I'd known she was going to get you all upset, I'd never have let her stay.
You knew. You did it to test me.
No, George. I thought she was just a child. She's like all the rest in this family. Can't wait to wiggle her little body to get men all riled up.
That's the way women are. If they were any different, they'd be freaks.
Don't say that. It's a weakness of the flesh. It can be overcome. I overcame it, and I'm helping you.
Helping me? You helped ruin my life. You robbed me of a normal childhood, and now you're trying to rob me of whatever little pleasures I can still enjoy.
It's a sick pleasure, George. It's shameful.
It's no more shameful than what I do with those dolls.
The dolls can't hurt you, George, and you can't hurt them.
Think I'm a weirdo for liking those scenes? Well, that's one interpretation, but I'm responding to more than just the behavior of the characters. I'm responding to Private Parts as a well-made movie, a very beguiling little movie full of sexual frustration and urges and all exceedingly well portrayed. This is the kind of low-rent stuff that people think they may be seeing. This film has really got it.
You know, I don't want to sound like some kind of a weird connoisseur, but I'm thinking this film came out in 1973, and even then, movie perverts were more interesting than they are today. These days, they just pull a stocking over their head, they get a hatchet in their hand, and they go out and knock off the junior class. It used to be, with movies like this, and of course the great master of movies about people like this was Hitchcock, that we really got an examination of their personality.
And your emotions, you're not shrinking back from the screen wondering if somebody's going to get slashed or some part of the body's going to be exposed. You're thinking. That's what this film does. Think you. Make you think through sexual material.
Well,
Very
Gene,
good.
I don't know how to break this to you, but my next film does not make you think.
Okay.
Invasion of the Bee-Girls came out in 1973 and immediately won a place in my heart as the best schlock softcore science fiction film since probably The Vengeance of She in 1967. Invasion of the Bee-Girls begins with a lot of men dropping dead after hearing strange buzzing noises in their ears while they're making love. The autopsies reveal that these men died of extreme sexual exhaustion. Now, I don't know how an autopsy could reveal that, but then again, maybe I don't want to know. Anyway, it turns out that the men are being seduced, depleted, exhausted, and cast aside by a new race of women who have mutated into queen bees. In this scene, William Smith plays a federal agent who comes to investigate the Bee-Girls. He wants some information that only a bugologist, played by Anitra Ford, can give him. She's been busy as a bee, secretly changing women into Bee-Girls.
Look, Mr. Ager, I'll answer anything you like. Just please be as brief as possible. I'm in the middle of an experiment.
Dr. Harris, how many times does a queen bee mate?
Only once,
Just once?
and only to reproduce. Once accomplished, she never mates again.
Yes, thank you, Doctor.
Calm down. It'll be all right. Take it easy. Calm down. Come on.
If you think you've seen Anitra Ford before, the one who plays the chief scientist, that's because she went on to become a regular on the TV game show The Price is Right. What happens in that basement room in the movie is that the women have their cellular structure changed so that they become bees. Now, I don't know exactly how that happens, and although the movie does have a little documentary on beekeeping as part of it, it wasn't too much help. There are a lot of really weird special effects in this movie, including one where the bee girls spray their new recruits with a kind of radioactive Ready Whip that not only turns them into bees, but gives them a facial and a hairdo at the same time. Invasion of the Bee Girls has everything a guilty pleasure needs. It has beautiful women, strong, dumb men, a plot to rule the world, and a secret laboratory with lots of neat machines with flashing lights. What else do you want in a guilty pleasure?
You've sold me. I will see this film, I promise you. Our whole subject of guilty pleasures raises an issue that's sort of hot now in film criticism circles. Stephen Farber, writing in the magazine American Film, recently said that a lot of critics are now liking trash. So let me ask you, are we lowering our standards by citing these films?
I don't think so. I think I could stand behind any of these films and say this is a film worth seeing, it's worth enjoying. The one that I like the most, Massacre at Central High, I think is an important film. But the other two that I chose certainly have qualities that I think made them entertaining. I'm not condescending toward them.
I don't feel the same way. I don't think I'm lowering my standards. Bugsy Malone to me is a good musical, period. High Risk is a very entertaining action picture. That's all it's meant to be. It is precisely that. Private Parts, Paul Bartel's film, I think is a very interesting investigation of material that can be treated in a trashy manner or in a real provocative, interesting way, and I liked it.
I think maybe what we're saying is we're happy to find that these films are doing these good things at all, since when we go in we have such low expectations.
Exactly. Let's take another look at our guilty pleasures. As I said, I like High Risk, the action comedy that is exciting and funny from beginning to end. Bugsy Malone, a wonderful love letter to American gangster films and musicals. And Private Parts, a sexual thriller that is a voyeurist delight. This voyeurist.
Okay, Gene, speak for yourself. Let's take another look at my guilty pleasures. Kill and Kill Again introduces James Ryan as a kung fu star with real style and charisma, maybe the next Bruce Lee. Massacre at Central High is the chilling, understated, and quietly effective portrait of fascism in an American high school. And Invasion of the Bee Girls is about women who use radioactivity to turn into queen bees and then go out, organize the workers, and make them drop like flies.
Well, that's it for this week. Next week, Roger and I will be back in the balcony looking at more films. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for sneak previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.